so I'm at the library right now, Eric. Oh, look what I have. Uh, oh no, what a coincidence. Anyway, I'm actually working at the library right now. I work at the second largest circulating library system in the United States. We're second only to New York, just above LA. Shout out to my LA people. Because technically, I'm an LA poet. You know, I mean, I just happen to be in Cincinnati, but I'm trying to like unify the scene here. John Burroughs is about to come down and gig on Tuesday night, and I couldn't be more excited about it. And I and a couple of lady poets are producing some all-female produced shows.
Awesome.
And I can't wait to tell you about it. So let's get going.
All right, let's get into it here. So
yeah.
Welcome to Make Your Own Fun. I am
Me,
here with the amazing Alicia YoungNeville. It is still morning here, so top of the morning to you.
It's not morning here. I'm burned out. I've been at the library all day, which basically means I've done social work. I've done everything from teach somebody how to use Excel to pick up trash off the plaza out front where I want to.
So, you know, typical Saturday,
so just
right?
the library. So basically, it's full of drunks. Okay.
So, awesome. So yeah, totally not different than LA.
Not different than LA. It's a public library, and they're the hub of the city wherever they are.
Well, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being on.
I'm honored to be
glad.
here.
I know this was all like a last minute, like rush to the finish line and everything. So we miss having you here in LA and Orange County and all that stuff. So it's good to see your face. It's been a long time.
I do still have a face. Thank you.
Yay. And like I was telling you last night, I was like, this is new. I literally had long hair 4 days ago.
Which would have been cool. I mean, just as good in Eric, but this is my preferred Eric. You know what I mean?
Like the book cover kind of.
The book cover, because this was who I saw standing outside of Library Girl at the Ruskin Theater when Susan had me at the Ruskin for the celebration of Hell on Heels, and that absolutely salaciously beautiful postcard that was the alluring temptation to come there. That's where we met, and I've loved you ever since. I love your daughter. My life's been crazy for the last year, and I just got to read this. Even though I read it.
You're gonna laugh because most of the poems in that book are about 10 to 12 years old. So there were a few that at the last minute I got in, and it was so sad because I got it all together in March of 2020, and like this, and then I was starting to book appearances, you know, open mics, trying to figure out like which cities I could go to, and you know, bookstore appearances, and then lockdown.
Yes.
And I'm like, fuck.
Which I have to say, the plague did delay my grand return to poetry. It just wasn't the right time to come back. And then with regards,
how could you promote really other than Zoom and stuff?
Yeah, you can't. And so that was just uninteresting, and I don't like being uninteresting.
Well, here's the thing too, because I know you probably have done some Zoom readings, and this is no slag against people who.
No, I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it.
What I call open mic Zooms, for the lack of a better term, but I've done a few, and after a while I stopped doing them because it was so weird to try to, you know, watch the person in the Brady Bunch square.
Yes.
And then you're muted, and so when you're reading, it just feels like you're reading to yourself, like an empty, dead room.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, when somebody else is reading and you're trying to be like a cheerleader, and they're not hearing anything either. And I get it's like you have to mute, otherwise it just becomes this crazy cacophony of sound. But I just, after a while, I was like, man, I just feel like I'm beating my head against the wall. So I will have another book coming out, hopefully either later this year, early next year. And that's going to just be about me being in front of people. And I'm sure you're the same way. It's like, if you have something new, it's like, you got to connect with people.
Well, let me speak to that, Eric, because that's kind of where my worlds collide. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a theater major. I graduated early from high school by about a year and a half and got accepted to Northern Kentucky University. And then I realized after being in theater for a while that at some point in my life, I would need to eat food. And so I dropped the theater and switched to the sciences. And P.S. long story short, I became a mortician for 13 years, which is also a form of theater. Let's be honest, I've spoken about it. It's still makeup, acting, curtain calls, cues, a Greek chorus of crying people and other people who are trying to kill each other over the money who died. So, I mean, if that's not, if that's not the Scottish play, I don't know what is. And then poetry, we all have our different styles and we all have to find what's right for us. But things that I hear after I perform I've never seen anybody read like that. I've never seen anybody perform a poem as though it's a one-woman show. You had me the whole time, that sort of thing. And of course, that used to get wild. I would take a whole bottle of wild turkey on the stage. You've met me.
I remember.
Well, y'all have come down a little bit, and but that zest and that passion for the arts is absolutely still there.
Well, it's interesting too because years ago, and maybe you didn't know this, I also worked at a memorial park for about 5 years. So
Eric, I didn't know that. Oh,
yeah, I started off as like a funeral assistant, and then I got promoted to being like advanced planning, like helping people kind of figure out what they wanted on their memorial markers and stuff. But
yeah,
I am glad that that is over, because like for like a certain chunk of my life, that was like you had to be like super serious, wear a suit every day, deal with bereaved, crying people. And like you said, like the thing that really gutted me was just the dog and cat relatives just clawing for a piece of something. And it's like, really, you're in a room paying the bill and you guys are going to be dicks like this to each other, and like you haven't seen each other for years, and they're like, anyway, about my cut of the pie.
Yes, and it's disheartening. Like, yeah,
I'm over that. I'm so over it. I was happy to be of service to help people get through that for the time, but looking back on it now, 5 years was maybe too much.
There was a great book written by a man named Mac McCormick called Days of Death, Nights of Service, that I read in mortuary college. And then I contacted him because it moved me so much. And then he said, we got to talking, and he featured me in American Funeral Director magazine in May of 2000.
That's a thing? That's so cool.
That's a thing. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah, American Funeral Director is a thing. So is American Cemetery. I've written and taken photos. Well, anyway, P.S. long story short, I ended up married to this man.
Whoa.
We found a funeral service marriage. I ended up married to him, but he said something that resonated with me, and I carried that with me the whole time. And that was, it is the noblest profession. You are doing a service to people in a time in their lives where very few people or very few things that anyone can do will make them feel better. And so I was honored. I am still honored, and I remember names of people that I buried. I remember the last name of the very first man that I ever sealed in a mausoleum vault. His last name was Ambergy in Northern Kentucky, not to, but I remember things like that. And it's sacred to me, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever been able to write about, because as you know, my first book, Hell on Heels, which can still be purchased on Amazon.
There it is.
Hell on Heels, beautiful, beautiful.
I love the artwork. Yeah, it's still great.
Yeah, Lady Lazarus Press put this out. Rest in peace, Deborah Marler. She was the publisher. And Billy Burgess, he is absolutely inimitable. Let me hold this up. His work is recognizable. It's my Facebook cover photo. What's funny is, as soon as I came back on Facebook, one of the poets went, "Do you know who Billy Burgess is?" And I was like, no, I don't. Tell me. tell me, and then I'll tell you about me. And so it was so cool because Billy is like, his work is known worldwide, and he's maybe one of the most talented living artists working. And
Right.
I mean,
Right
of
on.
course, I'm biased, but you
Well,
know,
let's corral this. Let's hop back in your
yeah.
way back machine of choice. Could be a DeLorean, could be I don't know,
DeLorean,
a
let's go with
closet
that.
with fur coats for no reason. And let me know, like, if you can remember, kind of like when you were younger, what kind of got you interested, maybe not just in poetry, but the arts. I mean, there had to be some kind of a book or a show or a movie or a friend or somebody that maybe gifted you something where you were like, I want to do that.
Mhm. I know that specifically. So in seventh grade, I had the most warm, loving reading teacher. Her name was Laurel K. Butts. And I say was like she's not alive. This gorgeous person is probably somewhere about 59 years old right now and living in Cincinnati, but she was my seventh grade reading teacher. And she always told me that I was going to be the next Leslie Stahl. Way before I even knew who Leslie Stahl was, she said, Alicia, I see big things for you. And she and her husband, I actually started babysitting for them. They mentored me and she turned me on to great literature. And she also encouraged me to write because she set up a mock press conference based on a story that we had read, and I absolutely obliterated the other seventh graders in that press conference. I held their feet to the fire, Helen Thomas style, okay? And she was just like, whoa. And then I was like, you know what? I can probably write. And then it just led to theater, and theater led to more writing, and here I am.
Do you remember, were you in Cincinnati at that time when you were younger?
Yes, I
Okay.
have been in Cincinnati since I was 6.5 years old. I say that Kentucky was my cradle, but the Queen City was my mother.
Okay.
Yeah, I still live in Cincinnati to this day. Will never leave. Die hard, but I'm an LA poet. I live here, but I am an LA poet. So
Do you remember in Cincinnati, I guess, what your first kind of open mic experience was like? Was it somebody who told you about something at like a college or a
I had
bookstore?
I had never done an open mic in Cincinnati until after I had had my first book release party at Beyond Baroque.
Oh, wow.
I could not get recognized at that time. Now, keep in mind, this is not now. This is 10 years ago because uh, this is the 10th anniversary of Hell on Heels. Seemed like a good time to come back. The pandemic's over. I had been away off Facebook for a year, just taking a mental health break from politics and shenanigans. And it's all just converged, this wonderful synchronicity.
Do you
But I
remember,
had
like, were
never.
you nervous? Do you remember if it was something that you wrote like
No,
that
I was
day?
pissed. I was pissed because somebody stole my proof of Hell on Heels and sold it on Amazon for $80. But it was at Rose Street Cafe. I was invited by a man named Brian Sullivan. It was the Queen City Poetry Slam. They allowed me to feature, and I was floating. It was, to answer your question, Eric, my first reading in Cincinnati was one of the most enjoyable performances of my life because I gave it in my home damn town. And that was just me kind of staking my poetry flag. And that was also 2012.
I remember when I first started doing open mics, and I think I did them in Santa Monica first, maybe even the first like city I did stuff in.
Like Rap
When I
Saloon stuff with
that,
Toledo.
and there's a place called the Unurban,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other places around Santa Monica. And I just remember being like so nervous and holding like the page and stuff. And I remember being like heckled and people being dicks, and I got stuff thrown at me a couple times. So I worked on it, and like a couple weeks later, I just went back and I just was like, I wouldn't say I was like a dick first to the crowd, but it was just one of those things where it was like, I decided, I don't give a shit and I'm gonna have a good time. And
Mm-hmm.
if they dig it, they dig it. And it's like after like a couple of weeks of me like getting used to being in front of people or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
then I kind of won them over because I was just like, yeah, I'm here to do my thing. whatever. And then after that, it was like people. I can remember people. I think it was like at the end of it, people were like, "He doesn't care if we make fun of him. That sucks. What's he
Yeah.
gonna read next week? Let's come back."
Hmm.
So it was like that. Totally
Yeah.
different. Like you had a book out. Like I just was like in the trenches, like reading stuff in a notebook and just being like, "Oh, you guys."
Eric, I get it because there is a Toledo poet that you may know. His name is Matt. He's lovely. And every year, and I know he's put out some books and stuff, but every year everybody looks forward to his Thanksgiving poem about not fucking the dressing because and I don't want to tell somebody else's story, but I went to Toledo to gig because of that poem about fucking up dressing, because his mother-in-law apparently is very particular about her Thanksgiving dressing. And he wrote one of the funniest poems I've ever read about Thanksgiving. And we all know how fun and wonderful and perfect every Thanksgiving is. So, not thanks. Yeah, I mean, you need a police escort to come to one of my family Thanksgivings. So I can't talk.
Well, let me ask you this. So, being from Cincinnati, was LA your first city that you performed your work outside of Cincinnati?
No, the very first time I performed was at a pop-up poetry shop in Brooklyn called Wordinks.
Whoa, okay.
I was invited. I don't know if you're going to get me crying, Eric. I don't know if you remember. I know, it's just like memories.
Right.
Okay, so the first reading I ever did publicly, my very first poetry reading was actually in Brooklyn, New York. At Wording's pop-up shop in Brooklyn. It was the book release party for Eduardo Jones. That was his pen name, Eduardo Jones. Real name, James Anthony Tropiano, rest in peace. The G train. That's how he died. He was hit by the G train. Not kidding.
Oh man, I thought you were going to say that was his nickname.
No, he was, oh, Eric, it's okay. We're funeral service people. We know. He's not with us anymore. And he was one of my closest and dearest. I will post some pictures of me and Jimmy in Brooklyn later. I was in love with a poet. I was dating a poet that I had met who was also a jazz musician named Mark Paleologo. He eventually became the beat poet Marcy Payne. He was trans until he wasn't. When we met, he wasn't like he wasn't sure, and then she became Marcy Payne, and she was an amazing poet. Puma Pearl knows her. She used to read a lot at the Yippie. She's done a lot of stuff at like CBGB's and like, you know, the St. Mark's area in New York. So that wasn't intimidating at all walking into that. And so I read, I rocked it. It was amazing and I was hooked and I was like, okay, this is my life now. And I met a couple of great poetry producers, Mary Erb, which Mary, if you're listening, find me on Facebook. And you know, that was my very first reading. So Eric, I'm the first person to admit I had never submitted to a publishing house when I was offered to write a book about my very interesting life.
Cool.
By another LA person in the scene, Rafael Alvarado. He was close friends with S.A. Griffin, John Dorsey. I mean, like, just start listing off people. And he was like, hey, these poems about funeral service are pretty cool. You want to write a book about it? And I was like, yeah. So moved down to Kentucky, lived in my grandmother's house for a year, wrote Hell on Heels, and the rest is history.
Very cool.
Cheers,
very cool.
Raphael. I owe it all to you, buddy. You, Susan Hayden, Eric, you always promoted me. Elena Sakota at the Rap Saloon, Essay, Richard Vargas, Paul Corman Roberts, and all of the Beast Crawl people. I could go on. Oh my God, Joel Landmine. Like I could start talking about Oakland poets. Because the Octopus Literary Salon in Oakland was my first Beast Crawl. And then I also read out at a brewery by Fruitvale Station. Again, you know, I've just always been embraced by California. So I guess like LA is my home away from home. You know, that's why I kept coming back.
Do you find that LA is, not LA in general, I guess maybe more just California is more open-minded to the arts, or there's just it's closer to the surface in terms of accessibility compared to like
That's it
Ohio and
exactly.
Kentucky? Okay.
Cleveland has a thriving poetry scene.
Oh, really?
Toledo has a
Okay.
great poetry scene. Louisville, St. Louis, I am not going to sell anybody out. Little Rock, Justin Booth down in Little Rock, Arkansas. Well, he used to be in Little Rock. I'm not sure where he is now. Justin, pipe up if you see this interview, put it in the comments. But you know, because I went down to Little Rock to gig. I'll gig anywhere where they've got a thriving art scene. And I'm not saying Cincinnati doesn't have a poetry scene. It's got a thriving poetry scene. I just feel like there's street poets, slam poets, and the academic poets. And I just want everybody to come together. I don't want to be the poet laureate of anything. If anything, I'd rather be a Southern urban legend.
Very cool, very cool. So and moving on to the second book and everything like that, did you kind of feel like you hit a stride and you kind of knew that you were going to stick with it and you got your little support group together and everything?
Yeah, so second book came out in the United Kingdom. It was released by James Goddard at Leaky Boot Press. It's available for sale on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. It might even be sitting on a shelf at Barnes & Noble, but I doubt it. But anyway.
No, that's, you know, it's not because of quality stuff. It's just they
It's
have
not.
the
It's because
turnover.
the way they
have to
you
pump out
can't.
the new stuff.
They have to put what people will buy on the shelf. And Fried Chicken, Schmussy, and other songs from a Baptist hymnal is not for everyone. And for those of you who are like, what the hell is the schmussy? That's the Yiddish word for boop. So I am not for beginners. I told my husband that when we started dating, and he found it very funny.
You're like, word to the wise.
But actually, my husband and I have been close friends since the third grade.
Oh, so he knew the deal.
His name is Young-Neville. He's a painter and a talented artist. He's an urban core art teacher who's tenured in an elementary school, and he is a freaking unicorn. He is my person, and he is why I'm able to be here and be happy in front of you right now, Eric, because I got to be honest with you. I didn't stop writing for any tragic reason. Like Dorothy Parker, I was too damned happy. This bird only sings when she's pissed. So I just needed something to get pissed about again. And all of a sudden, boom, here comes Donald Trump. And I got real pissed.
Fair enough. Let me ask you this, because you know, we both have kids and everything. And
right.
How do you, or I don't know if you do or you don't lately, but do you work either by name or not by name, like friends, family, real situations with those people into your work? And if they read it, how do they feel about that?
Well, that's a very complicated question, Eric, because I have written at length in all my books about my father's death, which initially I believed was a suicide, and was told by my family my whole life was a suicide. And then I'll be honest with you, in the last week, I found out it wasn't. My father was murdered. And so those are real. Those are absolutely real. But I am also the same person who used to tell everybody when they'd be like, Alicia, did that really happen? Not every poem has to be a confession.
Of course.
It doesn't all have to be exposition. Sometimes a poem's just a good little story. And I've been told that's part of the fun of reading my books. You don't know what I've done and what I've hadn't, but the things that are most salacious, you wouldn't put past me. So that said, you know, I get those comments like, I didn't know what was real, what wasn't, but I was enchanted. And I always hear, I didn't want the book to end, which is really fascinating because my first book of poetry is 152 pages, which for a book of poetry is this is War and Peace. Second book of poetry, which I feel like the quality has improved rather than the quantity. This one has got 80 pages. And then my third book from Poetic Justice Press, which is The Death of Disco, also a Billy Burgess cover. Death of Disco with my girl Blondie. And this was actually published by Chris Hagblom and Dominic Albanese in Florida. Poetic Justice Press is a social justice press and didn't make any money off this. And I really don't want to make any money off of anything having to do with my dad. I would just like that to go to awareness and survivors groups, because I am a living survivor of a murdered parent, and I'm pretty passionate about justice. So I am excited that I've got two books that they're written essentially, but with the book about my dad and my family, that I can't finish it because the story hasn't ended. We don't know how that's going to end. That's about to get real interesting.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I've written a few things about my daughter, especially in the new book that I'll have coming out. And I feel like she is finally now to the age where maybe she has some kind of perspective. She still would rather, talk about movie stuff that I do than poetry, because she's just like, well, then I read it and it's over. I'm like, you're 13. In a couple of years, you're gonna get like really into maybe not just poetry, maybe song lyrics, because right now she's just into music for music because it's fun.
You don't have to explain her to me. I have been a fan of your daughter since she was 3 years old. So she's probably the most beautiful little redhead on the planet, and you are one of the best dads I know, which is another reason why I wanted to talk to you, Eric, because your single daddom, being a fatherless girl who had a stepdad that tried really hard and volunteered and loved me and raised me, but that a father and a daughter is sacred. And I was his world and he was mine. And that's why I knew from the moment he went away that this isn't what it seems. Even as a little child, I knew there was something wrong. So figuring it out at 12 and then being able to say, I'm 44 right now. My dad died when he was 44, and I didn't feel like I had the right to turn 45 unless I solved his murder, unless I brought the truth about his death. And the fact that that's happening right now is a really weird but amazing coincidence, because I feel like goodness is on my side.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I think goodness is just another word for God. We just define it differently.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the kind words. So what's the game plan here for the next couple of years? I know you've got some stuff in the works and coming out, and maybe some surprises. I don't know. I'm just going to silently sip my coffee while you spill your guts.
All right, let me take a drink, and I'm going to I love that it says Writer Fuel. I'm going to shamelessly plug stuff for a second. Let me take a drink first. Okay. Sorry, I'm at work and I've been talking all day to my patrons.
I'm surprised they let you do this kind of thing there.
Which, by the way, I am a charming and magical hillbilly who wants to be declared Empress of Kentucky. And my most beloved and only sister-in-law on my dad's side, Sharon, just gave me this mug, and it's from Cracker Barrel.
Oh, cool.
It's got a bear and two little twin bears on it. And as you know, I've got 26-year-old twin boys, and she gave me that, and it's my new favorite mug. Plug for the mug. Thanks, Sharon.
Plug for the mug.
Okay, so here's what's going on. I wrote this down so that I would get all this right, because I've got a lot of stuff to plug, and then I got to dip, man. I know you're at a 40-minute, so we got to get out of here. So I've got 2 books of poetry in the kitty. Hypocrisy, Kentucky, a true crime novel and 20 poems. still got 3 or 4 more to write. There's plenty in there, but I can't finish it. And that will be coming out from Poetic Justice Press, same folks that did Death of Disco.
Right
Again,
on.
Dominic Albanese and Chris Hagblom in Florida. They are talented, brilliant, and Dominic Albanese has supported me in every way. I can't even go into it. He's family. Mwah. Salami, I love you. Dami Salami is what I call him. Second book is called Burning Love, Poems About Women Worth Celebrating.
Very
Just
cool.
a little sneak, because nobody who's featured in this book knows they're being featured in this book. These are poems written about the other female poets who supported me in the art scene.
Oh, that's awesome.
So there's an Iris Berry poem. There's a Susan Hayden poem. There's an Elena Sakota poem. There's a Marissa Hyde and a Sarah Perez poem. There are New York poets, Cleveland poets, and LA poets all in this wonderful book. And I am seeking a publisher for Burning Love. And because Iris is in it, I was like, I don't even know, because I've been gone for a year. I don't even know if Punk Hostage is still
I think
kicking.
so. Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that it is, but I didn't want to ask Iris. I thought it would be a little tacky to ask, or obnoxious. Would you publish this book of poetry about like you? But she did. She did write the foreword to Hell on Heels.
Oh, very cool.
And I have to say that she gave me one of the best, the first line of the introduction is, as Marilyn Monroe once said, I don't know who invented high heels, but all women owe him a lot. So Iris is just a gem. And so that's what that's about. Just celebrating the women who celebrated me when I came into the poetry scene, not to disparage S.A. or Christian Alvarez or Raphael or Danny Baker or any of the people who came out and supported me. They're all wonderful, and I'll have to do a, celebration of men, because I've got just as many guys that I would like to thank. So that said, I also have a new poetry open mic starting in Cincinnati, talking about creating the scene or improving the scene. It's going to be at Pilar in Cincinnati, Ohio, in the Central Business District. Pilar is named after Hemingway's boat, Pilar.
Okay, cool.
It's a literary themed bar at 56 East Court Street, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45202. I will be producing a feature, Burning Love, Poems About Women Worth Celebrating, with Sarah Perez and Marissa Hyde. They are my co-producers. So at some point, I will be inviting the ladies that are featured in that book to do that gig. We're working on it, but either way, let me plug that open mic. Sunday nights, beginning the first Sunday in November, 7 to 9 p.m. at Pilar. If you're a painter, you're welcome to bring your paintings. If you're a musician, please come and play. And if you do any sort of spoken word art, come sign up the sheet. It's from 7 to 9 p.m. I have been told, as long as people are festive, we will continue. But, because, some poetry readings will never stop unless you go, okay, you guys, we got to stop.
It's 4 in the
now.
morning. We have to go home.
It's like 4. We have children and jobs. So, come and hang up your artwork, literally and metaphorically. And then the other thing I wanted to plug is upcoming interview I'm getting ready to do that'll be dropping on Poet Runner. I'm going to be interviewed by Richard Modiano, who everybody knows from Beyond Baroque. And I also brought 2 other poets' works that I wanted to plug with me. This, which, okay, I read last night 3 times. What? All right, I'm going to shut up because you're interviewing me, but we'll talk later.
Okay.
And then if he weren't so humble, this man would have been the next Jack Kerouac, and that's nothing. He's a self-described blue-collar pilgrim that's ironically entitled Preening for the Mortician by Rob Dakin. Rob is based out of Athens, Ohio, over by OU. He worked at Harvard on the Hawking for years. He's retired from there. And these are the best two things I've read in a long time.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
also, Tuesday night, October the 4th, 7 p.m., John Burroughs will be at Sitwell's on Ludlow Avenue in Cincinnati. I'm going to crash that open mic. Come see me.
Awesome, awesome. So while we wrap it up here, where can people see and find your work online? There's got to be a nexus point on the interwebs.
There is. It is aayoung.wordpress.com. My little disclaimer, I actually stole from Rick Lupert of Poetry Superhighway and the Cobalt when I did my Cobalt reading, and Rick did this amazing broadsheet for one of my poems that I framed it, and it's one of the most beautiful things that I have in my home. He described me when he introduced me at that reading as Alicia Young is poetry for people who don't like poetry. And if that isn't the highest compliment a poet could pay another poet, I don't know what is.
Pretty classy.
Right? And so is he.
So your books can be found on Amazon, right?
And Barnes and Noble, yes.
And Barnes and
But
Noble.
all of them can be found on Amazon, yes.
Do you have a YouTube channel where people can see clips of you performing your work or anything like that?
I do not. I have to put that together, Eric.
Okay, but I think that if they put your name into
exactly
YouTube,
well,
they can
on
find
YouTube,
stuff.
you will find videos of me, but there is no specific like poetry Dolly Parton channel, Not, oh my gosh. So I should just say, shout out to Dolly Parton. She's my idol.
She's awesome.
She's the best person on earth and the most humble, beautiful Southern woman. And I still want to be her when I grow up.
I think we all do.
She's done more for literacy. My passion is literacy and digital literacy. And she has put more books in the hands of children than any other person on the planet with her imagination library. Thank you, Dolly Parton. She is the featured poem in the book of poems about women that I love.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I think we're not going to do better than that and to end it on a high note. So I just want to thank you so much. I mean, my God, it's so great to see your face and hear your voice. I wish we could go on for like another hour and have you read like your entire book. But
absolutely,
let's save something for everybody, that like a reason for them to buy the book.
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah.
And we'll have to catch up again. And I'm just so happy you're back, like in the public world and getting your stuff out there. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Eric, you are going to see my feet planted on the floor of Los Angeles.
I was like, where is this going?
No, you're gonna see me. I was gonna say of beyond Baroque, but I don't want to be presumptive, but that you'll be there. But I know that there are things planned. There are a lot of things cooking, and but no, I'll be in LA in the next 8 to 12 weeks. It's inevitable.
Oh, awesome! That's really soon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, enjoy your time. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your beautiful family, and do what you got to do to get through that day at the library.
Thank you very much. Cheers, sir.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye, Eric. Thank you. I was honored.
Thanks.